Okay, so in the previous demo, we've seen how to create partitions, and we've also pushed them to shards. In this case, a shard is a local database, and we created 2 shards, and we pushed 8 partitions to those shards so that the data actually lives in the foreign table and in this separate database. In this demo, we're looking at how to do schema migrations, and we're basically just adding a column and dropping that column later. So let's quickly look how the setup looks like at the moment. So we have this issues table. It is still partitioned, so we can check that. We can see those are pretty standard declarative partitions here, and then once we see where they live, we realize those are foreign tables, right? And then we have these 2 shards. Those are databases, shard 1, shard 2, and there we actually find those tables. So half of the partitions live in shard 1, the other half lives in shard 2. And now a standard migration would look like this, adding a column on a table. We would basically come in and just run the alter table statement, adding the column. Now this is of course possible here too, but now we've only run this on the main database and not on the shards. So let's see what happens once we select from the table. It basically fails because the column that we added is present on the main database. But once we reach out to the shards, we don't see the same schema. So this column is basically missing. So we have to do it slightly differently. I prepared this over here. So there is an add column migration. Let's look at the main part. This is basically what we've just been doing, adding column to the main table. And then there is migration scripts for each of the shards. And in this case, we simply add the column to each of the partitions, and those reside in the shard database. So let's run this on one of the shards first, so shard 2 in this case, and then do the same thing for shard 1. And now let's check the results. So we see that parts 0, that's one of the partitions, now has this additional column, and so do the others. Now, if we connect to the main database and do the same thing again, we can select from the issues table. We don't see the column yet, so this would show up over here, but we don't see the column yet, and that's the reason for that is that we haven't added the column to the main schema. So let's tell the main schema about the column. So in this case, we execute that on the main database. It's just the alter table statement, and now once we run that again, we now see that column here. So we can actually do select foo. This is the new column. Doesn't have any data in it, but it is now known. We can perhaps update the table to populate some data into that. That updates all the partitions in both shards, and now selecting that gives us a bit of data to look at. Let's see how the thing works the other way around. So removing the column. Now, if we start by dropping the column on the shard, it's going to be a problem because the queries from the main database, they still assume that there is this column. So basically it works the other way around than adding the column. So in this case, we would drop the column on the main database first. And then this won't work anymore because that column doesn't exist anymore. Once we go to the shards, we still see the column over there. So this is still present there. We can actually still do select foo from parts 0, so from one of the partitions, and we still see that data, and the column is still there, of course. Now let's drop that from shard 1. That's not possible anymore. And the same goes for shard 2. And now going back to development or the main database, we're back to where we started from, so this column doesn't exist anymore. So that's actually pretty straightforward for those examples. Perhaps that changed in more in a major version of Postgres, so the support for data repro got better. That's something I still have to find out. But I think that will be fine. We will be going around sort of updating the shards first, depending on the situation, and then updating the main database or the other way around. But that's pretty cool.